Okay, here we are, further up Lovell Canyon Road, and it's a lot more clear than it was below. Wow. Anyway, yeah, there's the beast, and we are now looking for Rocky Gap Road, and I guess I should have watched for the road numbers. There's such a series of roads in Lovell Canyon that are not paved and they're not marked. So here's one, 45549, and I believe this might be Rocky Gap Road. Like I said, I should have looked at the numbers on the map before I came here, but let's just assume that this is Rocky Gap Road and start heading up. Okay, in the event that this is actually Rocky Gap Road, this is the plan. I'm going to head up the road, and at some point, I want to find a ridge on the left. And there's one on the right. Nice gradual ascent ridge, but we want to be on the other side of Rocky Gap Road. So we're looking for the beginnings of a ridge that will be to the left of this road. Now, something about Rocky Gap Road is that it goes all the way from Lovell Canyon to Red Rock Canyon, and it's been named very well. It passes through a gap in the Wilson Ridge and also along the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. So it actually, one end is in Red Rock Canyon at White Rock Mountain, and you go to that picnic area, the Willow Spring picnic area, and you just keep going straight. Well, yeah, you will get through the gap to Lovell Canyon, but then there's the other part of the name of the road, Rocky, and this is a tame part of Rocky Gap Road that we're looking at here. And I'll show you some less tame parts of the road ahead. You need at least a really rugged four-wheel drive vehicle, and maybe more of a ATV in order to navigate Rocky Gap Road, because the rocky part of Rocky Gap is that in some places it's a challenge just to walk over this road, let alone expect to drive. And I see a lot of dune buggy type vehicles that make this Rocky Gap, and I guess you can rent them and then just go for it, which is actually not a bad idea. A lot of fun. We're not doing that today, obviously. What the goal is today, or our route today, is to find that approach ridge. Yeah, this is looking much more like Rocky Gap Road the further we get. But to find the approach ridge on the left. What I mean by approach ridge, it's the approach to the summit of the Wilson Ridge. Once we get to the summit of the Wilson Ridge, we want to take a left, see how far we can go. Now, we will be skirting the left or north side of Rocky Gap Road on the high ridges above, and we should be able to look down and see the Bridge Mountain Trailhead area and the North Peak Trailhead area in the canyon below where Rocky Gap Road is. And then when we take a left onto the Wilson Ridge, we will be heading up in the direction toward what I call the Wilson Ridge Southern High Point. And you can see that on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Got a page and a video on that. Getting up there and then heading down toward Rocky Gap Road on the Wilson Ridge. So, once we actually make it almost to the southern high point, we will have done the Wilson Ridge all the way from Rocky Gap Road up to Harris Mountain. So we'll have that all video documented. It's an amazing ridge. Okay, let's continue up, and yeah, this is looking like Rocky Gap Road. Okay, problems. There are a lot of divisions on these roads, and it says 5449 is this way. So let's assume that's the continuation of Rocky Gap Road. And yeah, the divisions in the road are largely unmarked, as you can see. I mean, there's nothing that says Rocky Gap Road, and there's nothing that says what this little road is. So what I'm going to do is continue up in this direction because it looks like the more established road. If any road in this area, it could be called established. So yeah, let's go up here and see what we can see. Well, here's a good sign that I made the right decision about taking that right turn just a while ago at a split. Here is a post with number of stickers that indicate the types of vehicles that would tend to be on Rocky Gap Road. So let's continue up. And by the way, I'm seeing this ridge line to the left, and this may actually be the ridge line I want to be on to ascend the up to the Wilson Ridge. We will see. I may divert and take this ridge line in a little bit. Okay, just to give you an idea where we are now, we've reached the first high point on this road where we can begin to look around, and I see another unmarked road heading off to the right, but it looks like the main drag is taking a left turn up here. So I'm going to take this left turn, but before we do that, just want to show you the road below. Let's go ahead and trace it from where we begin, because you can actually see where the beast is parked. Yeah, that's the beast parked on Lovell Canyon Road. And then you can see we'll trace Rocky Gap Road up to this point. Makes a U-turn up there, heads up here, and then takes a left. And continues on up. So let's see where we can see some potential ascent ridges. At some point I'm going to want to do an ascent ridge to the south, which would be to the right, and head down the Wilson Ridge south toward Mount Wilson area, and the connection with the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. But today we're looking at northern approaches to the Wilson Ridge. And you can see the high points above us. That is the Wilson Ridge. And I don't know, maybe we'll just explore Rocky Gap Road up to the Bridge Mountain Trailhead area, and then head back and have an idea of both the north and the south approaches to the Wilson Ridge. We don't know. Let's just continue on up and see what happens. Okay, just a quick note as more landmarks begin to appear. To the right here, you can see the Wilson Ridge. Then we trace it along to the southern high point. And then continuing all the way up to Harris Mountain. Okay, so we're going to continue on up Rocky Gap Road in the meantime here and watch for Wilson Ridge approaches to the south and to the north. This is pretty cool. Actually, Rocky Gap Road would make a great trail if you're on foot. And what I want to find is, where is the exact Rocky Gap? And I'm guessing that area there is the Rocky Gap. But we don't know. If the road takes a left, then all bets are off. But if that is Rocky Gap, then an approach ridge up to the Wilson Ridge summit area would be right here. But for now, let's keep checking out Rocky Gap Road and just look at approach ridges to the Wilson Ridge going north and south. North to the left, south to the right. Okay, continuing up Rocky Gap Road, looking at what I believe is the Rocky Gap. Which might make this a great approach ridge, just getting up to this point up here, which may be on the Wilson Ridge. But I want to take Rocky Gap Road just beyond that to see if there is yet a higher point, or see what this ridge looks like from the other side, the east side. We're looking at it from the west. Okay, continuing up Rocky Gap Road, getting a bit of a higher perspective. We're about at 6,200 feet at this point, and you can see what I believe is the Rocky Gap to the ahead to the left of that high point. But let's take a look over here. Had I taken that little gradual approach ridge, it actually looks very nice. Look how it continues down. I could have caught it below and continued up to this point. I want to get to the other side of this high point just to see where it continues before attempting to take that gradual ridge. This is the ridge to the left or the north of Rocky Gap Road. And then also we're going to look for approaches to the Wilson Ridge to the right or south of Rocky Gap Road. So here we are on Rocky Gap Road, heading east from Lovell Canyon Road. Okay, I've decided I'm going to make this a Rocky Gap Road baseline exploration today, exploring the Rocky Gap Road from Lovell Canyon Road on the west end of Rocky Gap Road to the Bridge Mountain Trailhead, and just looking, scoping out the ridge systems on the left or north of Rocky Gap Road. There's that gradual ridge system, and that actually wouldn't be a bad approach if I want to get up to these higher points. And then I want to see where we connect with the Wilson Ridge on the right or south of Rocky Gap Road. And and what's the most rapid ascent to the Wilson Ridge? And I don't know if these high points end at a dead end or if they continue on north on the Wilson Ridge. We just don't know. So that's why I want to go a little higher up on Rocky Gap Road to just check out all the Wilson Ridge approaches and which might look the best. And here's one of the quick reasons that Rocky Gap Road is aptly named. Here is a wash that crosses Rocky Gap Road. You see there are a number of places where a wash crosses this road. And this is one of the more tame areas. In some places where the wash crosses the road, the terrain looks, on the road, looks almost like this. Now we're looking down the wash, so it's obviously not the road, but yeah, that's what you face on Rocky Gap Road. So definitely I'm not taking the beast up this road, and unless you have a really good four-wheel drive or something even better than that, dirt bike maybe, ATV, you don't want to try to go up this road. But having said that, I would also say that if you are on foot, this makes a pretty awesome trail. There's a lot of seclusion, solitude on Rocky Gap Road, except that on a busier day, perhaps, and where the approach road, Lovell Canyon Road, is not so washed out, you'll see the ATV people and have to step aside a number of times in order to let them pass. And they're pretty loud. And having said that about the ATVs being noisy, I would also say it looks like they're having a lot of fun. Looks like a wild time to take ATV up Rocky Gap Road from Lovell Canyon Road to Red Rock Canyon. Now, here is another approach ridge that gets you up to that same high point, or maybe even beyond. And if you took Rocky Gap Road to that point, as I am right now, you could speed up the process of getting onto the Wilson Ridge. But I still want to see what's beyond this point here. And speaking of the Wilson Ridge, we mentioned that we're going to look for approach ridges also to the south. And so here we are looking to the south of Rocky Gap Road. And this looks like a decent approach ridge leading up to that high point ahead. But I still want to see what's beyond. I want to see what things look like from the other side, because this could be a great approach south and north to the Wilson Ridge, or it could lead to some dead ends and some canyons, intervening canyons before the summit of the Wilson Ridge. We don't know. That's why this is a baseline exploration day. Yeah, and there are a few great pullouts along Rocky Gap Road, all the way along Rocky Gap Road. This is one of them. So if you were doing something like climbing Bridge Mountain, you could come in from, maybe Las Vegas and spend the night here in this great spot, and there are more ahead, I'm sure, and then drive up to the Bridge Mountain Trailhead, which should not be too far from where we are right now, and then climb Bridge Mountain and have all kinds of time. So there we're looking to the north, and yeah, as we get higher up on this road, oh, look, a little trail. How cute. Let's see if it goes down, because there is one huge, no it doesn't. There's a wash that's getting deeper and deeper between Rocky Gap Road and the ridgeline to the north. So yeah, that place we looked at before with the gradual ridge so far looks like the best approach. By the way, this is another camping spot. Somebody had a lot of time here to make little trails. That's nice. Okay, Rocky Gap Road heading down. And that gradual ridge would have brought me up to this high point, which would then be approach, I think, to that next high point, which has got to be the summit of the Wilson Ridge. So yeah, that gradual approach ridge looks better and better if you're going north on the Wilson Ridge from Rocky Gap Road. But let's continue on just to see what lies ahead. Yeah, here's one of those little sections where Rocky Gap Road gets fairly evil if you're in a wheeled vehicle. There's looking down the wash that caused this rocky section here. By the way, I'm wondering if there are other approaches to the summit of the Wilson Ridge and where that summit is exactly. Another higher look at the ridgeline to the south of Rocky Gap, no, to the north of Rocky Gap Road. So approaches even from this area don't look too horrible, but we'll see. Let's continue on up. Okay, we're looking back down Rocky Gap Road, and this ridge line you see to the left looks like a potential approach ridge to the south stretch of the Wilson Ridge from Rocky Gap Road. And we were there just a moment ago, and it looked like you could get up into this area. Would be a nice little walk. Entering Red Rock National Conservation Area. And I believe those would be summit ridges on the Wilson Ridge. But as you can see, the approaches are a little more wicked from up here on Rocky Gap Road. So my best guess at this point is take that gradual approach ridge from lower on Rocky Gap Road, and then you'd be standing up on this ridge line without having to scale all these rocks. And yeah, you could probably make it through the rocks, but it's going to take a lot longer. Continuing up Rocky Gap Road, now we're entering the Rainbow Mountain Wilderness area. And still looking at approach ridges. This one looks like a potential, a little steep near the top, but potential approach ridge to the south. And then looking at potential approaches to the north. It's not looking as good as that gradual ridge below. Let's continue on up and see what we can see. Well, here's a stretch of Rocky Gap Road ahead that I'm not sure you could make it in any kind of vehicle. Yeah, this looks more like a climb than a drive. Now, I'm sure people do it. If you're a very experienced four-wheel drive person, maybe you could do this. We don't know for sure. Wow, look at this. Now you're basically in a wash. I'm just not seeing it for any kind of wheeled vehicle. Looks like there is a kind of a bypass that's not as wicked as this main wash, but then you end up in the main wash. Wow. Makes me wonder if I'm even still on Rocky Gap Road. Well, looking back, there's the less evil bypass route on the right. Yeah, I don't think so. And here's looking ahead to more fun. Imagine driving on this and actually calling it a road. Well, maybe if you're in a monster truck or an Abrams tank, this is your road. and not seeing a lot of friendly Wilson Ridge approaches to the north here. Or to the south. So I think our Wilson Ridge approaches probably began lower on Rocky Gap Road. There you can see some tire tracks. So somebody made it through this section. Wow. There again is another alternate route. I don't know, that doesn't look any better than the one I'm on. Well, that little stretch from hell was indeed Rocky Gap Road. Even though it looks like a flood boulder wash. And the reason I know that it was Rocky Gap Road is, guess what? Here we are above that area on Rocky Gap Road. Looking down Rocky Gap Road toward Lovell Canyon. I'm not seeing many ascent points in this area, but had I taken that gradual ridge, I guess I would have been on top of these cliffs by now. Interesting. This is looking up Rocky Gap Road, and then to the south, and yeah, it looks like it's possible to navigate up through this area, get to the upper edge of those cliffs by skirting around to the left. Don't know, haven't tried it. But we might be looking at the Wilson Ridgeline to the south, and to the north. I'm estimating that up on the top of those cliffs, you're probably looking at about 73 to 7,800 feet in elevation. So let's continue up Rocky Gap Road now, much more tame, but still, you probably want a four-wheel drive. A little higher up on Rocky Gap Road, and now looking north on the Wilson Ridgeline, and I believe, yeah, that cliff is on the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline, going north. And this cliff may be on the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline going south. And in a bit, oh, by the way, yeah, let's look down. There's Rocky Gap Road, the tame section. But we'll go around the next couple corners, and I think we're going to start seeing the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline as we get closer to the Bridge Mountain Trailhead on Rocky Gap Road. Rocky Gap Road toward Lovell Canyon. And as we're looking at this cliff line ahead, this is heading south from Rocky Gap Road. And as you look at the cliff line, I think this might be that cliff line that meets with the Wilson Ridge above Juniper Peak. I mean, it meets with the upper Rainbow Mountains, meets with the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline above Juniper Peak. Just rounded a corner. Is it possible we're looking at North Peak? Don't know for sure because I've never seen it from this perspective, but wow, it looks like a good candidate. If that's so, then the Bridge Mountain Trailhead is not too far ahead of where we are. And there's another shot looking back at that cliff line, I believe is the summit of the Wilson Ridge, leading over to connect with the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline above Juniper Peak. Yeah, you'd be heading south or left on that ridgeline to meet up with the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline. Okay, looking down Rocky Gap Road, this is where we put a number of things together because guess where we are? We're at the Bridge Mountain Trailhead. And you head down in this direction on Rocky Gap Road. We're at a summit point on Rocky Gap Road, or the summit point. You head down in this direction, you're going to end up in Red Rock Canyon. And you head down Rocky Gap Road in this direction. If you could make that little stretch of hell that we were looking at a little earlier, you'd be down in Lovell Canyon. So let's get a better perspective of where we are here. This, by the way, is the direction you would go if you were taking the Bridge Mountain Trail, where you'd either be going to North Peak or to Bridge Mountain. And so what you're looking at, yeah, and this is the Bridge Mountain Trail. What you're looking at ahead is the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline above Bridge Mountain. And this is the Bridge Mountain Trail that winds upward, ends up in that ridgeline. You head south on that ridgeline and you'll eventually get to Mount Wilson and ultimately Highway 190 up at Mountain Springs. If you head to the left or north on this ridgeline, you will end up at the North Peak Trailhead, or further, you'll end up at the very tip, the northern tip of the Rainbow Mountains. And then here we're looking at the La Madre Mountains. And you're looking at that ridge line that leads above White Rock Mountain to the La Madre Mountains. If you take a right on this ridge line ahead, you're going to end up at the La Madre Mountains. But if you took a left, you connect with the Wilson Ridge. Somewhere beyond this area, this is the Wilson Ridge, the high point on the Wilson Ridge, just north of Rocky Gap Road below, and I'm wondering, it might actually be a really quick way to, it looks like there's a little trail here on the other side of the road. And I just wonder if that trail will lead up to the Wilson Ridge. If it does, wow, then we're at the southern portion of the Wilson Ridge, right above Rocky Gap Road, although the ridge line does continue across Rocky Gap Road, and that's where eventually you're going to meet up with the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, which is up there. The two ridge lines meet above Juniper Peak. So we'll check that out at some point, just so we can catch all the ridges. But I did want to take this time just to scope out the two ridge lines, Wilson Ridgeline, Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, and then also this ridge line that leads up to La Madre Mountains. And you can actually catch this ridge line that's straight ahead at the La Madre Mountains. You can catch it at La Madre Springs area, just above White Rock Mountain. And I think we can zoom in on that La Madre Springs Canyon. So you can look at LasVegasAreaTrails.com, see where in the La Madre Mountains and Red Rock Canyon, both of those sections of the website where we ascended what I call the Keystone Thrust cliff line above La Madre Springs area. We reached the summit of this ridge line, all class 2. Then we headed toward La Madre Mountain. And what I'm going to show you is El Bastardo, El Padre, and La Madre. And I'm going to zoom in on those in order. The reason I'm telling you ahead of time is that there's a directional mic here, so you won't be able to hear what I'm saying. So just watch for 3 mountains, and the first will be El Bastardo, then we'll go to the right, El Padre, and then a little bit to the left of that, La Madre. El Bastardo, El Padre, La Madre. Okay, and one more thing about this approach from Lovell Canyon is that if you are on foot, and like I said, I wouldn't be in a vehicle going through that stretch of hell below, but if you are on foot, definitely you can get to this point a lot more rapidly than if you started from Red Rock Canyon. I'd say maybe in a half, maybe even a third of the time. So just a note. Okay, let's head back to Lovell Canyon. Oh, and by the way, that rock formation I pointed out as potentially North Peak, it's not. It's on the wrong side of Rocky Gap Road. North Peak would be up in this direction. And also, if you head down Rocky Gap Road toward Red Rock Canyon, it's going to be a little easier on vehicles. Not a whole lot, but a little easier. Maybe you can do it without an Abrams tank. But if you're heading down this way to Lovell Canyon, bring your tank or your monster truck. And finally, the summary of what is a good approach to the Wilson Ridge and the upper ridge line would be maybe this approach. We'll give it a try. I don't know if it ends or if it continues on up. But I would say that it's more likely at this point that that gradual ridge down near Lovell Canyon on Rocky Gap Road is the best approach to the Wilson Ridge upper ridge line going north toward the southern high point and Harris Mountain. But we're going to try this soon and see if this could be an approach to the Wilson Ridgeline heading north. Now, as far as the Wilson Ridgeline heading south, I don't know. Maybe you could skirt the other side of those cliffs and catch the ridgeline down where those cliffs meet Rocky Gap Road, and then head over to connect with the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. We don't know for sure, but we're going to find all that out in the near future. Decided to get a little higher perspective of the area. There's Rocky Gap Road and the Bridge Mountain Trailhead. And then here's the Wilson Ridgeline heading north. And notice this other ridge line from the La Madre Mountains. Keystone Thrust Ridgeline or La Madre Mountains Ridgeline. Yeah, that then connects with the Wilson Ridgeline somewhere around here. and then continues north. On the other hand, if you were going south, you'd end up in this area and then maybe take that gradual ridgeline back down to Lovell Canyon Road. Then on another adventure, head south on the Wilson Ridgeline, meet up with the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, somewhere in this area. Because here's the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. Down to its northern extent in Red Rock Canyon. The White Rock Mountain area. But you can take it south, Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. Eventually it meets up with the Wilson Ridgeline around here, a little beyond. And the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, if you stayed on it, you'd go all the way to Highway 190. And we'll do that at some point. We've done most of the ridgeline, but there are a few gaps. Okay, speaking of gaps, let's head down Rocky Gap Road to Lovell Canyon. Okay, we're almost back to Lovell Canyon Road, and those hills are on the far side of Lovell Canyon Road. This is Rocky Gap Road, and just a summary of the best approaches. From all the approaches I've seen, this gradual ridgeline up to that summit and then beyond would be the best approach to the northern ridgeline for the Wilson Ridge. Now you're looking up Rocky Gap Road. And this ridgeline to the south would be the best approach for the southern stretch of the Wilson Ridgeline. You'd probably reach the summit of the ridgeline somewhere up there. So that's my best wisdom on the north and the south approach. South, north to the Wilson Upper Ridgeline. So we'll try that out not too far into the future. In the meantime, heading down Rocky Gap Road, back to Lovell Canyon Road. And there's the type of vehicle. Yeah, that's the type of vehicle that is made for Rocky Gap Road. Continuing on down. Well, here we are back at the beast, and it took me around 50 minutes to get down from the Bridge Mountain Trailhead. This is definitely the shortest route up Rocky Gap Road from Lovell Canyon, the shortest route to the Bridge Mountain Trailhead by a long shot. And I imagine it'd take probably less than an hour going up Rocky Gap Road. But here we are, back on Lovell Canyon Road, and probably the most challenging part of today is going to be navigating some of those rocky sections from the floodwaters on Lovell Canyon Road below us. Onward.